They work in academia, they work in media, they work in, or they are engaged with political parties.
Charities.
In charities. And they impose what they think into the political agenda and actually reinforce the reactionary powers.
It's an issue.
They are irrelevant in terms of the way that they think, but in terms of the reality, they have influence, unfortunately.
The good thing that's coming out of this conversation is that we've had a conversation which acknowledges the very real influence of geopolitics on our revolutionary situations and limits the room of maneuver for progressive forces, while moving, I think, hopefully beyond whether or not there should even be this campus versus non-campus debate, because for me it's non-negotiable, right? That if my people are rising up, what I want from my people is for them to live with the dignity and hope that they deserve. Starting late last year, a new wave of insurrection took hold in Iran, triggered by an economic crisis and culminating in millions calling for the overthrow of the government. And make no mistake, this revolt is being carried forward above all by the poor and dispossessed. Women, youth, the unemployed, surplus populations, precarious workers, and students. I'm joined by Hamid Reza Vashagani Farahani, a researcher at the London School of Economics and Political Science and a social worker activist who has struggled for children's rights and against child labor in Iran. Thanks for joining us, Hamid Reza.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
So I was wondering, with what's happening in Iran right now, if we can fast forward to today, you said something about a recent economic crisis that led to these protests. I think some people make the argument that these economic pressures are primarily due to US sanctions, and that the Iranian government should not be held responsible for the economic downturn that led to these protests. What would you say to them?
Yeah, of course, sanctions have influence on the economy, without no doubt, with no doubt. But if you see the embezzlement in the country, the corruption among the elite and the oligarchs, and the expenditures of the Iranian regime on suppressing the Syrian revolution, which turned that country into a war zone, you will realize that it is not just sanctions. And then we also have issues like mismanagement as well, and also discrimination. So in lots of areas in the country, money is being spent, for example, for the propaganda, for the regime institutions, ideological institutions. However, when it comes to the welfare of the people, you will see that nothing is being actually spent significantly. And then, on the other hand, you can see a process in which education, healthcare, all of these are becoming more commodified year by year. And also, if you look at areas like, for example, Khuzestan, which is the main producer of the oil in the country, you will see that we have villages and they are like 600 meters, 700 meters away from oil or gas infrastructure. And they do not have even gas, electricity, and proper drinking water. So these discriminatory policies, plus the expenditure on the institutions of the regime and its war machine, and also the embezzlement, actually contribute to this situation.
That's really good to know, and it provides a lot of context. And so what you're saying is that the people who've been rising up in all of these cities, the reason why they're rising up is because life is just no longer livable. They feel that they can no longer breathe.
Yeah, of course. And we also have environmental issues as well. That is partly because of the climate change. But on the other hand, we also have issues of mismanagement of water, or taking water from one part of the country into another part of the country for just fueling the infrastructures that or industries that need water, for example, the steel factories, while those factories could be built near the sea. But they didn't do that because those areas near the sea, they are not from the ethnic majority of Fars, but they're like other ethnic groups and other religious minority groups living there. So we also need to take these environmental issues into account as well.
Totally. So there are people, there are voices, and when we switch on the news here in the UK, are often calling for a foreign intervention into Iran in order for this revolutionary uprising to, in their view, to be finalized. They think that with the support of Israel, with the support of the United States, that then Iran can transition through this. What would you say to those voices? Because those are the voices that tend to be the loudest and they have the most resources, and they tend to try to speak on behalf of the Iranian people on social media, on the mainstream media, etc.
Yeah, I do not deny that a portion of the population in Iran actually want those sorts of foreign interventions. But we need to take into account two things. The first is that the only voice that has been represented loudly in the media and to the Iranian people has been the voice of the son of Iranian former Shah. And that person actually promotes this idea. And then the other thing is that, the population is quite frustrated from all of the political parties inside the position, and also because the opposition has not been successful for many years to actually do something about the demands of the people and trying to lead the movements in a way that is inclusive. So they have no hope. And people who have no hope through the propaganda could be easily end up with that sort of positioning themselves. But that voice is not the only voice as well. We also have many people who are opposing the foreign intervention, of course, for different reasons. Some from nationalist perspectives, some from socialist perspective, and also some from the perspective that tries to protect the government as well. So the opinions are quite diverse.
Yeah. And so from those voices, let's say, for example, the progressives from all across the world, in West Asia, here in Europe, etc., in Africa, wherever, they want to support the revolutionary demands of the Iranian people, but they don't want to support the ways in which local actors or even actors in exile, like the Shah and the Shah's sympathizers in the country, the son of the Shah's sympathizers in the country and like the son of the Shah, and don't want to support any foreign intervention, but want to support those particular voices. What advice would you give them? And who are these people, and where does one find them?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the social media has not been accessible for the Iranian people inside Iran. And this has been one of the main issues, that their voices have not been reflected appropriately and proportionately. I think emphasizing on this diversity of voices and understanding the complexity of situation would be one of the main things that might be helpful. And the other thing is that people could have their own voice. So the best thing is to put pressure on any institution or any government or anybody who could facilitate access to internet. Mm-hmm. Because when internet is shut down, then the voices that can the possibility of passing the gatekeeping of the mainstream media could be heard. And this is one of the problems, because independent voices usually do not have that opportunities, and we know that many of the mainstream medias are quite biased, and their gatekeeping processes neglects many independent voices, because they want to have figures in their screenings, not voice of the ordinary people or activists who do not have a big name.
Totally. So could you give us an example, an understanding of the balance of forces in the country? And then also tell us about the voices in exile. So the voices outside of Iran and who they are, the most dominant voices. What is their vision for Iran? So first of all, in the country, how are people approaching this insurrection? And then outside of the country, what are the people who are claiming to have the answer? What is their political project? What is their vision? And how much power and leverage do they have to be able to have some kind of effect on what happens on the ground moving forward in Iran?
So when it comes to the people in Iran, that because internet is being slowly coming back, it is not like everybody has access to internet now, but some portion of the population has got access to internet with a very low speed. And what I have seen in last 2 days is people had quite a big hope in the first days of the protests, because that the protests didn't start after the statement and the call of the Reza Pahlavi, but they started before his call, and people had the hope, but when the suppression started, they gradually lost this hope, and lots of people have been killed. So what I can see now, unfortunately, is, and understandably, of course, is the grief and also sadness and a bit of disappointment from the opposition, and also even among some of the people who advocate for Reza Pahlavi. And that's it. But some hope still exists.
What did they want to happen, and what did they say didn't happen?
They expected that there would be a possibility of overthrowing the regime, but that didn't happen. And instead, we had like a massacre. And we know that many people have been killed and shot. And there are some statistics from 5,000 to 20,000. So, we don't know the exact figures now. But, and this is quite sad that even we could not get the real number. Because, behind these numbers, there are names, there are people, there are who have families, friends, etc. So now that the country is like quite in shock, and that is very understandable. There was a mass movement, and it's suppressed, and also the way that Reza Pahlavi and some of the media intervened actually did some harms to the movement.
Could you explain who Reza Pahlavi was, who his father was, and how did he intervene?
He's the son of the biggest son of the former Iranian king or Shah, and he intervened in terms of issuing a call and asking people come to street, and people was in the street before his call. But his call facilitated the process in which regime started to legitimize itself, that Israel is being involved, United States is being involved, and legitimized killing people.
And what did sorry to interrupt, but what did Israel say and do, and what did the US say and do during this popular uprising? So as I'm understanding it, there was a popular uprising. People were rising up. Things could have gone in a different direction. But the way in which people here in exile took advantage of the situation for their own political ambitions actually put endangered people on the ground even more, because it gave the regime an excuse to unleash the violence that happened, right? So what did the US say? What did Israel say during this time?
They said that we have agents in the field.
Israel said this.
Yeah, Israel said that. Yeah. Some Israeli politicians said that, and United States also said that the help is coming. So, and then the son of Shah claimed that he has 50,000 inside the armed forces, and they will support the uprising. And this gives some sort of like assurance to people that okay, the suppression apparatus is going to be dismantled, and there would be like gaps inside the suppression machine, and that would be helpful in terms of like overthrowing the regime. And nobody and many didn't expected that sort of like killings and shootings, but that happened. And the illusion that the son of Shah injected to the society was very harmful, because based on this illusion, many people, even those who do not support him, would say, okay, if that is the case, then we are not going to face any sort of heavy suppression and massacre.
Because a coup would happen, is what people thought would happen.
Yeah, but nothing happened except massacre and shootings.
Yeah, and then the U.S. approach, even though it was making these claims, its approach was more similar to what they wanted to do in Venezuela, right? Which is to come towards a negotiated settlement with the existing regime, not even just the regime. I mean the IRGC, the army, the Revolutionary Guard, who many suspect at this point really don't have any cause that they believe in anyways, except for maintaining their own rents and their own political power. And so even then, right, like, so Trump had no intention, and if he had, that would have been even worse. But he had no intention of an intervention, and then Israel basically just gave the regime the talking points it needed to kill, I don't know, children, to kill civilians in the name of defending the sovereignty of the country. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And
I guess like the question then is, what kind of alternative vision can there be for a scenario, because these kinds of things break people's hearts. The people feel that the world doesn't care, and that they will never be able to overthrow their oppressors. What kind of alternative vision can there be? I mean, where is the left? Where is the Iranian left?
Many activists and many of the people who have been involved in civil society, both formal groups and informal groups, they think that some sort of alliance should be made between democratic forces who believe in some very basic principles of social, economic, and cultural freedoms and justice, and who think that the destiny of the people should be determined by themselves. And we already have these forces on the ground in Iran. We have many unions, in different sectors and among different professions. We already have had lots of demonstrations in the streets.
You have youth neighborhood councils also.
Yeah, we also have had some of them. We have teachers organizations and union. We have a students union. We have some trade unions and workers organizations. And these are like spread among the country. And they have practiced shouting their demands and also organizing themselves to put pressure on the government to resist discriminatory policies through the years. So these forces are actually, I think, are the only hope. And the opposition, the Iranian opposition, really needs to listen to them. And one of the issues that we have in the diaspora opposition, particularly the center and right-wing opposition, they don't want to include those voices. They do not want to accept those voices, and this is quite sad because the population, the society, has the capacity and has the potential, and this has been shown. This has been showed during the Jina uprising in Iran. You know that women, life, freedom is kind of a very progressive slogan, and it includes many progressive demands of the people.
And the Shah, just to clarify, the Shah of Iran is against that slogan.
Yeah. He actually removed that slogan from his social media profiles, and the circle around him in their social media asked their supporters to not use that slogan, saying that this is a leftist slogan.
And could you actually just explain to people where that slogan comes from?
That slogan is rooted in the Kurdish liberation movement. And originally it is Jen Jian Azadi. And during the Jina uprising, when that slogan became the main slogan of the movement, you were able to see very progressive ideas among the people. And that was some sort of alarm to many of reactionary forces, including the Iranian regime and also the right-wing opposition, including son of Shah. And interestingly, for 2 years, there has been a heavy propaganda about the left and against the leftist thought and against the feminism, both in government-owned media and also in some of the opposition media. And the main thing was, I think, that these reactionary forces realized that if the society is moving toward that direction, then there won't be any hope for them to maintain their power or be able to capture the power. So that campaign started, that propaganda started. I'm not saying that propaganda changed the mind of the people completely, but I'm saying that made the whole situation more fragile in terms of the moment that people started to organize their thought and organize themselves and realize how they are interconnected with each other. These interventions, these propagandas actually made it more difficult. And then in an uprising that is happening now because of the internet shutdown and also because of the mainstream media gatekeeping, then these voices are being censored or not heard, and then the voice of Shah, son of Shah, and the right-wingers, Zionist groups are becoming the main voice of the uprising. But that is not true. And this is like this has some sort of like reproductive effect as well, because when the slogans are only those slogans that are in support of Shah are being screened by mainstream media, then people themselves would see, okay, this is something that is led by son of the Shah, and that has some sort of like reproducing effect as well.
Exactly, and it's also important to note the differences of resources, right? Like you have a left that was in Iran that was decimated by the Islamic Republic, even though that left helped bring the Islamic Republic into power. They were killed. Lots of them died in prisons. Some of them came in exile. Many of them got divided, right?
Yeah, so but they didn't help the Islamic Republic came into power because we have had like different leftist groups in Iran who contributed to the revolution, and many of these groups were actually against the Islamic Republic referendum. We had a referendum in Iran, and many of the leftist groups sanctioned that, saying that yes or no to Islamic Republic is not a referendum.
It's not a question.
We need to have more choices.
Yeah.
And then these options should be made based on political negotiations between the groups.
Totally. And I guess what I meant was that they were both participants in the same revolution which overthrew the Shah.
Yeah.
But you're right. And in many ways, we could say that like they played a huge role in spearheading the revolution. They were sidelined, eliminated, killed. And the left, correct me if I'm wrong, but the left in exile here also seems divided on political lines, divided on what they want to do, what they want for the future of the country, and under-resourced, right? Very under-resourced, because the people behind the Shah of Iran, I mean, they have Iran International Television, and that fund that has an annual budget allegedly of $250 million, and that's being beamed satellite into the houses of people. And then there's also a false nostalgia that kind of propaganda, which is aided, of course, by the US, etc., creates in people. It makes people imagine that during the time of the Shah, everybody was rich, everybody was free, everybody was happy. You could go and have a drink in the pub, and everybody and it's there's no conversation there about the Shah of Iran's secret police, Savak, the forced disappearances, the no almost amnesia about the experience of the US-backed intervention against Mossadegh, all of this, right? It's so, I mean, that also complicates things. And so I guess the really difficult question then is, where do we go from there? Because on the one side, people can fall in resignation and they can say, I think that what this psychological effect could have. Again, you know the scene more than me. I'm someone who doesn't know much about what's happening in Iran, but the psychological impact this could have even on the left can be traumatic, which is to say that it could instill in the left, which is supposed to be a revolutionary current, a kind of conservatism, because things could be even worse. So where do we go from there? Like, how do we make sure that people still recognize the right to revolution, but that there is another path that's not the Shah's constitutional Zionist monarchy, that's not there's that group called the Mujahideen Khalq who people see as like they fought on the Iraq side of the Iran-Iraq war, and they have a lot of internal repression and very scary stories about them. And also they themselves have played the Shah game and gotten closer to the neoconservatives and in the United States. So people don't want that vision. They don't want the vision of the Shah. How can we reignite a revolutionary vision that's not and I think the reason why this question is so important is because this is the experience of the left in so many other revolutionary situations around the world. The same feel, we've seen revolutions stolen, and not to say that the left instigated them, but to say that during the revolutionary moment, we begin to see something seems to be changing. An opening emancipatory horizon seems to open up, and quickly international affairs, people, the right wing in exile, all just come and just destroy that. And I guess for me, this is also, as from someone who's from Sudan, who also witnessed a revolution turn into a counter-revolutionary war, the answer to this question is just as important to me, and I guess I want to hear your thoughts on that.
This is a really hard question to say what we could do in terms of if we approach it from a quite optimistic perspective. We should know that these forces exist, these reactionary forces exist, and they intervene.
Yeah.
Because there are economic interests, there are geopolitical interests, and that's it. The only thing that I think we could do is to organize as much as possible and try to convince other people to join revolutionary organization and to find ways in which different groups of people are tied together in terms of the oppression they experience and also in terms of the hope they share with each other.
Yeah.
That would be, that is like something like a poetry, but in reality, it is the only thing that we could do. If we understand that how issues of ethnic groups in Iran, for example, are connected to exploitation of the land and resources, and how this is related to the exploitation of the workforce, and how this relates to the reproductive work of the women, and how this relates to the ideological apparatus of the regime and the way that it imposes particular identities and cultures into the people's life. If we could make this sort of network that shows how different issues are interrelated with each other, then I think that we could do something, and organizing would be facilitated and would be more impactful. I think this is the only thing that we can do because we do not have money, we do not have mainstream media, and this is like a quite difficult situation, of course. But on the other hand, we also have people who devote themselves into the struggle, the working class, the feminist activists. And we have lots of them. Many of them are imprisoned and still they are in prison. So we could count on these people and these activists, and that the country could rely on them, I think. And this is, I think, the only way. Yeah. That, of course, contextually, things could be different from, for example, like Sudan to Iran to any other country. But I think the first thing is organizing. And the second thing is to constructing a V that realizes what is its power and how its different parts are related to each other.
So let's say, for example, I gave you the annual budget of Iran International today. You got $250 million. And you wanted to, you had a program of exile, first for the Iranian diaspora, but also you also had some suggestions that you could give on how resources should be used. What would your call be to the Iranian diaspora, the progressive Iranian diaspora? And I think a lot of us are learning that there's also a very big contingent of very regressive and reactionary Iranian diaspora. So what would you do with the progressive Iranian diaspora? What would you also do in terms with the international left, the people who are not convinced that they support the Islamic regime because they think that that's anti-imperialism? But there's another portion who believe that it's possible both to have an Iran that is anti-imperialist and continues to fight for different peoples, but is also anti-authoritarian and pro-democratic and as supportive of, as run by the people, the different peoples of Iran, and from below. Let's say, for example, some of us imagine that we really believe in that vision. What would you do with that?
With that money?
With that money.
Oh, I would invite other people to come and sit together and see what we can do. Mm-hmm. Because it is a very difficult. I mean, of course, resources could be used for having an independent media. They could be also used to work on different matters that are related to the workforce, that are related to the demands of the demands of the laborers in Iran. But I mean, what seems for me important in terms of resources is that should be something that is coming from the inside the country, controlled by the people inside the country, and spent by the people inside the country. So one of the things, because the diaspora could play a significant role in any movement. But on the other hand, the diaspora is not connected to the country, is not experiencing the life that people are experiencing there. And one of the issues that I think that is important, it is not relevant to your question, but it is quite important in terms of the way that many leftists, many Western leftists approach the issues of countries like Iran, is that they do not understand the real lived experience of the people who are living in Iran. They haven't experienced, for example, the exploitative colonial approach of the Iranian regime towards the Arab population of the country. They do not experience life of a boy or girl who is 11 years old, a Baluch girl or boy, who has not any identity document, and because of that could not use any sort of medical insurance, any sort of education, and has no civil rights at all. And even their existence is not recognized. So I think this is one of the things that I think anybody who claims that they are on the left side of the political spectrum, they should understand that they're not living the life that people are living in a particular place. So instead of telling those people what to do, they should listen. So maybe if I have that amount of money, I would say that I would organize the diaspora and the Western left to sit and listen to the voices of the people that comes from inside the country, from the unions, from the workers' organizations, from the activists.
Yeah, and I guess there's a practical issue here. Yeah, you said earlier that some of the protests, the revolution began without the call of the Shah, but then the Shah was able to convince people, many people, that it happened because of the call of the Shah. And I guess should the revolutionaries in exile play such a passive role, or can there be a way where you're listening, but then you're also feeding back a political program that people feel is an alternative? Because one of the things that I did realize among some of the Iranian friends that I know is during the 12-day war, when Israel was attacking Iran, and Israel appropriated the Women, Life, Freedom slogan to attack Iran, a lot of people were against that war. And although, especially when the bombs began to fall in Tehran, there was a certain kind of, let's say, a national spirit, which saw that Israel, as much as its propaganda would like the Iranian people to believe, is a threat, to Iran, that the Israeli project is a threat to Iran. Those are the same people, many of those same people, I imagine, I might be wrong, I imagine many of those same people also rose up against the regime, And so the question then is that we also don't have, I don't know. I constantly think about it myself, because I also start to think to myself sometimes that maybe that those of us in exile should be more humble. But then I realize that there's also a vacuum. And I guess that's the part that, honestly, I don't have any answers, but that's the part that always keeps me, it's just, and I think also about the ways in which sometimes helping a liberation struggle inside a country can be done from the outside in very logistical and practical ways. But I guess I also hear your voice, I hear what you're saying about being humble about it. Being humble about not having the answers, especially with the distance that you have from what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to these sort of practical things that can be done, at least we know that, and this is not just for this uprising, but also during the internet shutdown, when we had the Women Life Freedom Movement, and before that in 2019 uprising as well. One of the things was access to internet. Because people, organizations, civil society, unofficial groups, they have their connections, they have their networks, they have the plans, not necessarily for doing a revolution, but the way that they would respond to an emergency situation. And in many cases, people just gather together and come up with an idea to do. But when internet is cut down, when people struggle to communicate for very basic things, then it becomes like quite impossible. Because, nowadays, life of most people relies on internet and on IT communication things. So, and this has been demanded by many in Iran from the diaspora, that we don't want you to go to the European Parliament to lobby for us. We don't want you to go to the US Parliament to lobby for us. Find a way that we can communicate with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear your voice. And so...
And the diaspora, I mean, particularly the right-wing diaspora who has money and everything, they don't do this. And instead, they organize themselves in a way to come to the streets in European cities and saying that Javid Shah.
Yeah.
And this is like this is quite heartbreaking, because we see what people say and ask, and then at the same time we see that the diaspora does nothing. And I agree that some people who were opposed the Israel's war against Iran, because it wasn't actually targeting just the Islamic regime, but also ordinary people and even activists and political prisoners. They attacked Evin prison as well, in the name of killing somebody there that is like an oppressor, but in fact they injured and killed other people, ordinary people who are imprisoned.
Exactly.
But when people are frustrated, that change of mind is understandable. And then the other thing is that we do not have actual statistics and figures about how these two opinions are covered or are existing among the same population. So we actually do not know anything about that.
We don't know, but I think that what I'm trying to say is that there's potential. I really believe, right? Like, and this is despite like the pessimism that we can face with the fact that even in an insurrectionary moment, the ones who want to benefit the most are those who are most resourced and the most reactionary, who have the worst. They want to replace an Islamic dictatorship with a secular dictatorship. Okay, we know that, but there's still something in the way that the people organize in their informal networks, in the uprisings against their daily humiliation. Women going out into the streets with nothing to lose, or feeling like they've got nothing to lose, but they have a lot to lose, But that courage, right, coupled with I mean, I don't know how to put it in the right word, not patriotism, but a sense of like dignity, that they know that like the foreign intervention is a threat to them. I see the potential there for a real revolutionary project. I really do. I just it's hard to maintain the hope sometimes in the face of reaction and in the face of imperialism.
Yeah, because the propaganda machine works.
Yeah.
If it didn't work, then reactionary powers wouldn't have propaganda machines.
Yeah.
So the propaganda works.
And it has a cause. It exists for a reason.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is that we need to understand that because people are frustrated, then if this propaganda machine is influencing them, it is not because they do not think or they don't have any intelligence or rationality or whatever. And this is quite important, not because we need to be empathic with the people, but also strategically and being faithful to the reality. And that is, these people are experiencing misery, frustration, poverty, environmental crisis, polluted air, not having access to proper water, electricity cuts, internet shutdown, state suppression and oppression, years of discrimination against ethnic groups, colonial approach of the government in some of the areas to extract resources of the ethnic groups. So this is the situation, and that the left in the West needs to understand this instead of repeating the imperialist narrative that is Israel and United States are engaged. Because this narrative is actually undermines the agency of the people, and I'm not saying agency of the people necessarily ends up with good results.
Yeah,
of course, it is not.
The point is let's be real. Yeah, let's be honest and about what's happening to a huge portion of the left. This is just a pure definition, purely from a definitional perspective. A huge proportion of the left, the campus left, are conservatives. That's what that functionally. What is their political call? Conserve these regimes, because they're the lesser evil. That is a conservative position to take. If you see people going out into the streets against the regime, okay, and you say that in that confrontation, because of whatever you want to say, CIA, whatever, you say, you are a conservative. And the point is that not only in Iran, but in Iran and in Chile and in Haiti and in Sudan and in Colombia and in Ecuador and in Mexico and on, and I can go on and on. In the last 5 years of my life, there have been uprisings everywhere. Regardless of what the regime, whether the regime calls itself left-wing, whether the regime calls itself right-wing, the people want the downfall of the regime. But a huge proportion of the left call themselves revolutionary, but they're conservative. So, but I think the honest conversation that we're having with each other right now, so I've reached the point in my life personally, is to treat that portion of the left as irrelevant. When there was an uprising happening in Sudan, some of them were saying that it was a color revolution. That the CIA, why would the CIA want to instigate a revolution in Sudan? It was a popular mass movement. So for me, these are kind of on the baseline principle thing. The people have agency. The people have the right to rise up. The people have the right to overthrow their regimes if those regimes don't deliver what the people need. That is a universal right for every group of people, no matter where they are. A huge proportion of people who say that they're on the same political spectrum as me say no. There's no such thing. People don't have agency. People are puppets. It's just geopolitics. Everybody's just on a string. And one has to ask themselves then, what is the point of politics in the first place? What is the point of you engaging in this politics in the first place? If you think that millions of people going out into the streets are being treated like by a big CIA puppet, then why the hell do you want to organize in the first place? if those millions of people don't have agency, what makes you think that you do? You know, this is the question that I have to ask myself. And so that's why I treat that portion of the left at this point in my life, I treat them as irrelevant. That's why I didn't want to even ask the question about them.
Yeah, but they still have power and they still get a space. You know, this is one of the problems, because many of these campists, tankies, they occupy a space in media talking about issues. And this is one of the frustrations as well for the people. I've seen some of them in media coming and having their votes, while independent left activists do not get the opportunity to say what they think in those media. So this is one of the problems that we have. And then on the other hand, they also, in terms of how politics work in the West, they use their influence to support the oppressive regimes.
Yeah. And
they work in academia, they work in media, they work in, or they are engaged with political parties.
In charities.
In charities. And they impose what they think into the political agenda. And actually reinforce the reactionary powers.
It's an issue.
They are irrelevant in terms of the way that they think, but in terms of the reality, they have influence, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's very depressing.
Yeah.
It's very depressing. But I think that, you know, maybe just to conclude, the good thing that's coming out of this conversation is, I think I'm hoping that what we've done is that we've had a conversation which acknowledges the very real influence of geopolitics on our revolutionary situations, and limits the room of maneuver for progressive forces, while moving, I think, hopefully beyond whether or not there should even be this campus versus non-campus debate. Because for me, it's non-negotiable, right? That if my people are rising up, what I want from my people is for them to live with the dignity and hope that they deserve. And that doesn't mean a kind of populism which says that you support just the majority of the people. Maybe the majority of the people are under the influence of the Shah's son. And in that scenario, you still have to go against the grain. But you still, on a very principle level, have to say that it doesn't matter what people believe. What people believe is one thing, but what people deserve is an entirely different thing. And as long as I'm a progressive, I have to fight for that vision. Even if it's the minority vision on the ground, I have to fight for that vision. But what I'm not going to do is either play PR for the regime that is oppressing them, or sit back and in resignation, although it's tempting, and say there's nothing that we can do in this situation, or even push for some kind of reformist compromise because I don't believe that the people can triumph. If that was really the case, I would be a liberal, and that would be the end of it. That would be my politics.
And you know, the movements are also dynamic. So now people who even have been influenced by Son of the Shah, they are rethinking the situation and what has happened and what he said about for example, the 50,000 people inside the armed forces, and they didn't help with anything. So I mean, people also think. So if even they are influenced,
yeah,
they would think about what they do and what they want. And one of the important things is that I understand that we need to understand issues in different layers and at different levels. For example, at one level, we need to see what is happening between the countries, but we also need to see what is happening inside countries.
Totally.
And but the problem with the anti-imperialist narrative that only considers what is happening between the countries and the global south and the global north, and then only defines these two based on the countries, is that it fails to understand people live a life and they want a better life, and they experience things that they do not deserve, very, very bad things like discrimination, poverty, etc. So people, even if are influenced by, I don't know, any foreign power. In fact, there is something real in their life.
Totally.
And that leads them into uprising against regimes. And sometimes it is nobody has forced the Iranian regime to kill a girl in custody because of not wearing proper hijab. This is not done by United States. This is not done by Israel. This is done by police officers.
Yeah.
Or nobody has forced some of these puppet judges in Iranian judiciary to sentence activists into 6 years, 10 years of imprisonment. Independent activists. I'm not talking about somebody
a monarchist.
Somebody, a leftist, independent, or even not a leftist person. A teacher who is just demanding a fair salary. When a regime does that, and if a leftist person, a leftist political party or a leftist group fails to understand that, and just tries to attach everything into some sort of imperialist agenda, I think that it doesn't make sense at all, and it is somehow a betrayal to the values of the left, that is social justice, economic justice, and cultural justice.
Totally. And may we develop a decolonial politics that allows us to take all of these things into consideration at the same time. On the one side, a sympathy with the complexity. On the other side, an adherence to some basic principles. When you see a cop and you see the people, you're on the side of the people, not the cop. When you see a boss and the worker, you're on the side of the worker, not the boss. When you see the people out in the streets and in state apparatus, you're on the side of the peoples and not the state, right? You recognize that people can take advantage. You recognize that different powers can benefit. You recognize all of these things. That's absolutely fine. But don't play PR for a regime that doesn't need you to play PR for them anyway. They've got enough. You know what I mean? Like these are the kinds of I'm a bit emotional because I share this frustration with you. I guess just the last question I'd ask you is, for you, what does a real decolonial approach to the insurrection in Iran look like, and to the struggle of the Iranian people?
Yeah, first of all, I think we need to consider that the situation is very complex, and complexity is not necessarily something bad. Complexity represent the society and the dynamics within the society. So this is one thing. And then the other thing is to understand that even if a reactionary force takes the advantage of the situation, this does not delegitimize demands of the people. And when people in a country like Iran become enough brave, or this sort of braveness you see, a friend was saying the other day to me that it doesn't matter for me if that 19, 20 years old girl or boy now chants the name of Reza Pahlavi. What matters for me is that that person is enough brave to come into the street against an oppressive regime. And if tomorrow even Reza Pahlavi is in power and that person is oppressed,
they'll come out in the street.
They will come back. Because the history is not like one event. The history is constant struggle. But sometimes, because some countries seems to be a bit far for some people, then they would just generalize the situation in them, do not see the complexities, and do not see that there is a dynamic, changing society there.
Yeah.
Iran from here is a name of a country, and Iranian people is a concept. But when you go to Iran, then you will see that there is diverse attitudes. And it is like here as well. for somebody who lives, for example, in UK, they will realize that, okay, UK is not just UK. It is a society with diverse groups, with diverse political attitudes, diverse political parties, and lots of institutions, lots of charities with different attitudes, with different approaches. Yeah. And so, but from outside, it is United Kingdom. And this is the same for Iran and for any other country. But when people sit in the West and talk about other countries, they usually fail to understand these complexities and these diversities. And then the other thing is that I think even when we talk about the society, we also need to acknowledge that in that society, some of the ethnic groups have had the privilege, and some other groups have been discriminated.
Not only discriminated, but face something like internal colonialism.
Yeah. For example, Arab people in Iran are actually facing internal colonialism because the resources are being taken from them, and they do not take any benefit of that. For example, oil. And we also have had like ethnic groups like the Kurdish people who resisted bravely against the Iranian regime from its early days. And also they resisted against the Shah's regime before the revolution for decades. Yeah. And they have been suppressed heavily. So for me, to have a decolonial approach means to understand that at different layers there are power imbalances and domination is not just happening at one level.
Yeah.
And this so for me to be to have a decolonialist approach or to be anti-colonial also means to be intersectional at the same time.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, I guess I'd just like to take this opportunity also to because we mentioned the Kurdish people to really speak up for the Kurdish people right now in Syria who are facing and this is, it's always important, I think, to be decolonial, to look from the perspective of the most racialized, marginalized communities in our regions. And to show that even this so-called new Syrian regime is as oppressive against the Kurdish people as the regime that preceded it, and no, you know, that the Kurdish people are facing massacres right now in Syria as we speak.
Yeah, and that is quite like very, very sad. But on the other hand, we're also seeing that they are trying to organize themselves.
Totally.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, Kurdistan, I think, is one of the hopes of the West Asia.
Totally. Okay, and with that said, thank you for joining us in this episode of Decolonial Dispatch. I'm Hamid and Naeem, and I will see you in a fortnight.